Have you heard about attachment theory? Maybe you've read the book Attached. In this video, I want to talk about what attachment theory is and isn't, and why it's the only theory that you will need to either find love or get more love in your relationships. Lots to get into. Stay till the end where I will give you your relationship RX for love. Welcome to Reality TV Therapy with me, Dr. Diane. Welcome to my new series, Relationship RX. Do you like my new office? If you're new to my channel, I'm Dr. Diane Strakowski, licensed psychologist. I also follow reality TV dating shows to give you examples what not to do and what to do in love. But this is new content. I want to deliver a new video to you every Sunday. And I want us to be like having a nice chat. Consider you're in my office with me. But I want to go over popular topics like today in this video to talk about attachment theory. I'm also here to answer your burning dating and relationship questions. So if you want me to answer one of your questions, be sure to follow me on Instagram and send me a DM. But oftentimes in my Bachelor and Love is Blind content, I reference a person's attachment style. And I wanted to give this video more of a primer, talk about why the book Attached has been so popular. Many of you are probably familiar with the book Attached. The authors Amir Levine and Rachel Heller wrote this book, and it came out in 2011. It's quite a while ago. But it's been a backlist bestseller and has gained more familiarity over the past few years. I'll be getting into the pros and cons of the book a little bit later. But I want to share a little bit of history on attachment theory. To start, the founder of the theory was Dr. John Bowlby in the 1950s. Dr. Bowlby was a psychiatrist and psychologist, and he studied orphans at the end of World War II. Dr. Bowlby was one of the first to study developmental issues, in particular paying attention to how one's early life impacted their later life, particularly their romantic relationships. And he observed that orphans, because they didn't have parents, struggled romantically. Out of his seminal work, important decisions were made, like even allowing mothers to be with their baby in an ICU, etc. But Dr. Bowlby summarized so many important things. He said that your attachment style is something that can affect you from cradle to grave. Yikes, that sounds pretty daunting. Meaning that the first 2 years of a child's life are crucial for their development. What he means by attachment is really attunement. Parents being attuned to their children to help them feel secure in the world. Interesting enough, Dr. Bowlby himself was raised by a nanny. And when his nanny left, he experienced it like the death of his parent. So he went on to say that caregivers are not always parents. Now, after Dr. Bowlby, Mary Ainsworth decided, is there a way to study attachment styles in a laboratory? Are there more than one? Because in his case, studying orphans, oftentimes those were avoidant types. How many are there? So they developed a beautiful study called the Strange Situation. The tricky part is Dr. Ainsworth was going to people's homes and trying to understand parents and their attachment style with their children, but you see one's attachment style when they're under threat or stress, which you couldn't create in a home. Instead, brought children into a laboratory, 18 to 24-month-old children, usually with their mother, and then brought a stranger in. If you know anything about children, you know that children do not like strangers. So this was the threat that she was creating, and then noticed that there were 4 unique types of people, or she calls them attachment styles, that she's able to carefully and consistently chart on a graph and came up with these 4 types. Since then, you might know these as anxious ambivalent, anxious dismissive, disorganized or fearful avoidant, and secure. Those are the 4 main types, and that's been consistent since Dr. Bowlby created the theory. Let's talk about what attachment theory is and isn't. For starters, your attachment style is not a diagnosis. You can look everywhere in the DSM. It's called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. And if you're a therapist, a psychologist, an LMFT, you know that this is the book where all the diagnoses are written. But you won't find it in the DSM because, or even when you go to your doctor's office, your attachment is not a diagnosis, it is more of a style issue. Your attachment style is not something that you can see with the naked eye. Rather, it's more obvious during periods of stress, as Dr. Bowlby said. But the problem is in dating, and why dating is so hard is because a lot of people fake good. It's not until you know them over time before you really see what their style is. So as I mentioned in the strange situation, the toddler was responding to the stranger as a stressor. But then again, somebody's attachment style, you wouldn't see it until they're under stress. This is why I love the theory talking about reality dating shows, because people are under stress. How I like to think of people is they're a little bit like tea. You don't get somebody's flavor until you put them in hot water. This is when their needs, unmet needs, usually from childhood, are going to bubble up during those times. Otherwise, it's very hard to see. And what I love about attachment theory is it's one of the most well-researched theories out there. So if those things are what attachment theory isn't, what is it? Well, it is a way to understand yourself and your partner, because not everyone is the same. And as a couples therapist myself, people come in usually when there are different needs and unmet needs are arising in the couple. For instance, one partner, the anxious person, craves closeness and wants to feel connected and feel validated, but the other partner needs space. Can you relate? This is what we talk about. Funny how common it is that opposite attachment styles attract. Now, your attachment style is also a pattern of responding that you learned early in life in how to survive in your own family. Your attachment style is developed the first 2 years of your life, when 80% of a child's brain is being developed. As I said, this is a critical period. This is when the parent or caregiver needs to be responsive to the baby. Now, in addition to that, we'll talk about emotional availability. What does that mean? Take note, if you're a parent yourself, how do you respond when your baby is crying? Oh, baby, you're crying. Oops. Your diaper's not wet. What's wrong, honey? Oh, you must be hungry. Mommy has a bottle for you. Here you go, honey. That will make you feel better. Oh, your tummy will be full and you will be so happy. Did you notice what I did there? It's not just about being attentive to my child. It's helping them identify what their feelings are and then providing a solution. Oh, baby, you must be hungry. Mommy's going to take care of you. And you can see if as a parent I did that consistently, my child would not be so anxious and would know that I am also the source of someone who can help them, and they would trust me. So now the problem is, what if your parents didn't do that for you? And don't worry, we're going to get to that because the majority of parents don't even know that. But the goal is always to move towards security, meaning it doesn't matter where you start, whether you're anxious or avoidant or ambivalent, that you need to be working on yourself. I'll go over that in another video, but let me know in the comments if you want to know how to heal yourself. Okay, so let's talk about these. These are predictable patterns, as I said, in the 4 distinct types. I just want to go over a very brief summary here. So take the anxious person. What is their issue? Well, their parent might have been very inconsistent in their parenting. There for the child sometimes, but not others. As such, the anxious person feels that the inconsistency in dating is really what bugs them the most. They just need to know you love them and you are there for them. They have trouble trusting people because they didn't fully trust their parent. And the biggest fear underneath is fear of being abandoned or rejected. Now, how will that person show up in dating? They might be a little bit controlling. They might overthink things. They might attach quickly. You know some of these people in Bachelor that do this. But they are turning essentially towards a partner looking for support, closeness, to be seen, heard, and understood. Okay, the avoidant person now, quite different presentation. In this person's childhood, they may not have gotten a lot of attention or verbal praise or emotional support, acknowledgement of what's going on. Usually these families in general are more like low touch. So the message is, I'm here for you, but I want you to be self-sufficient. Kind of like islands, they're all operating in separate ways. We're not talking about feelings or emotions. And what does that person look like as an adult? Well, they might be someone who doesn't like a lot of closeness. They crave being alone because that's what they learned. You get it? These are things that you learn in your family. They might interpret everybody else as being more needy and dependent. We classically call them avoidant people, but they could be out of touch with their reality. They might even say that their childhood was idyllic because they didn't know what they were missing. And then there's the fearful avoidant person, that they truly experienced abuse from their caregivers or parents. That could have been physical, emotional, psychological abuse. So of course they have a lot of fears in terms of getting close. They don't know who they can trust because of this negative environment. And lastly, of course, we have the optimal person, which is the secure person who had that parent who was very attentive. They learn that I can trust people and the world is safe, and therefore I can go explore as the person did in the strange situation and feel confident that I've got a secure base. Now, what percent of the population do you think falls into each of these categories? I would oftentimes go to couples conferences, for instance. I ask the attachment theory specialists, what are the stats here? And everyone would say 50% of people, because the early studies said that 50% of people are secure, leaving 22% anxious, 22% avoidant, and another 6% what they used to call disorganized. But I don't know about you, but that number just struck me like, really? Because I don't think that's the case. And I wondered, is it just me? There's some things about the theory that actually bug me. First off, the early studies were done with children. We need to figure out, well, you might have had a secure childhood, but what if something happened in adolescence or a bad relationship? Would that cause you to become more insecure? And those stats just didn't make sense to me. So I didn't care for the labels, like anxious ambivalent. Is the person really ambivalent about a relationship? I don't think so. So I wanted to rename these types myself, and I'm going to get to it because I created a quiz that did exactly that. But I think ultimately the anxious person is more nervous. Why? Because they have a sensitive nervous system, and that is more descriptive. The anxious/dismissive person, who we call avoidant. Are they really avoidant? I think ultimately what they're looking for is to maintain their independence. So I call them independent. What about the disorganized person? It's not that they're messy, right? Disorganized doesn't quite capture it, or even fearful avoidant. I think this person is more confused in their relationship. So I call that person confused. Put those all together, I've created my 4 types. Nervous Nora or Nick, independent Isabel or Ian, confused Connie or Connor, and then of course there's secure Sophia or Steve. That's who we want to be. Figure out how to do that. Now, here are the types. I didn't like the statistics. I didn't like the label, so I said I'm going to do something on my own. I did my postdoc work at Stanford. I have a lot of experience in clinical research and in stats. And I noticed another variant. I don't know what you think about this, that people who would come to my office then in my 30 years of clinical work, and they just looked different. I even think in my own family, my siblings look different. Like all of us run more anxious, nervous types, but there's the high versus low expressive types. And this can be tricky, even doing an intake. If you're a therapist, you know what I mean. Like in a couple, one person comes in and they're leading, talking about all the problems. That person's usually the high expressive person. They want to get it off their chest. They want to work through it. They want to talk through it. Versus you have the low expressive person. Now they might still be anxious, but they're just not speaking up as much. And so you might miscategorize them and think they're more the independent type, but that's not always true. Why is it important to know? Because the treatment then and what you're going to be encouraging that person to do is quite different. So I said I'm going to come up with my own quiz because I don't believe the stats. And I want to have new titles, and I also want to include this low and high expressiveness. So I created something, instead of calling it an attachment style, I called it a love style. Love style meaning your attachment style plus your communication style, high or low. The questions I usually get then, and were lots of quizzes out there, so I looked at everything, what was out there. Some were expensive, you had to pay money for a quiz. I didn't want to do that. And some would say, okay, well, you're secure with your mother, but you're anxious with partners, and then with your best friend, you're avoidant. I'm like, what? That doesn't seem right to me. To answer the question, can I be more than one type? Like, for instance, what if your parents are a mix of types? Aren't you naturally going to pick up on both of those? But I don't think it's helpful to think that. For me, the answer is no. I'll give myself as an example. So in my household, Polish immigrant parents. My mother is quite anxious. In fact, as children, I remember being anxious of the mailman who used to come to the door. And my mother had a lot of anxieties. Again, we learned these from our parents, and so therefore I picked up on that energy. Now, my father also had a very difficult life, but he was more the avoidant or independent person. So wouldn't I be a mix of those two? I'm going to follow which is the more dominant parent. And in this case, my mother took up more space. Her anxiety was more palpable. And because she was the primary caregiver, chances are I'm going to follow in her footsteps. Okay, everyone might be different. You might have generations of independent types, and therefore that's what you're going to mimic or mirror. So it doesn't help to think of yourself as being mixed types, because in order to heal, you're going to be working on different things. So therefore, again, I developed my own quiz. I talked with my colleagues in attachment style. I literally had 50 questions that I then narrowed down to 10. So now I met with a statistician, tried to figure out, again, the high and low. A little bit complicated on the back end, but currently I'm proud to say I've had 90,000 people take my quiz. So I have a fair amount of data. Now, can you guess what my statistics revealed? All right, big drum roll here. This is what I thought was the general population anyway. So I'm thrilled that my clinical hunch was right. But 46% of women, the most common, 42% of men, have an anxious attachment style or would be the nervous Nora or Nick types. All right, this is why I so often talk about the nervous types on reality TV shows. Why? Because they're the types of people who also want love. They want to be in a relationship, so it makes sense that they're going to go on TV, and they're going to be the most dramatic types too, crying when they're rejected, getting hurt easily. Second, the independent type, 23% of men, slightly higher, 21% of women. And then there's the confused type, similar to the fearful avoidant, which I came about 7%. So those statistics sound about right. But that leaves me with only 26% of women who are secure, 28% of men. Men think they're a little bit more secure, okay, but not the 50% that we thought originally. And I think this is more accurate for the population right now. So let's talk about my characters. I want you to watch this quick little video because if you know me, you follow me on Instagram, you know I'm all about the wigs. I want to get into character. I want these to be relatable.
Who are you? Are you Nora? Or Isabel? Connie? Or Sophia? Maybe she's born with it.
Maybe she learned it.
But most important to recognize that it's something that you learned and therefore you can unlearn it. Okay, so that's a lot of information. Let me know in the comments, is any of this new to you? Do you have any burning questions? Have you taken my quiz? I'm going to get to that. But it's important to know your love style. Dr. Dan Siegel said you have to name it to tame it. And I loved this because otherwise, all the advice that you get, from these coaches or that, do this, don't do that, speak up more, tell people your truth. If I'm too much, find less. It doesn't really hit. You have to know who you are, what you are working on. But otherwise, it's insanity, at least in therapy, we say that, to keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. So if you're a high expressive person, you're going to be struggling with different things than if you're a low expressive person, etc. Now, by the way, why is it important to know? I'm telling you because your partners are not going to tell you. What's going to happen in dating is people just stop dating you. They just ghost you. And as I said, these things are so hard because people are faking good. And you can be blindsided easily. All right, what do I mean by that? Because it's blindside, I don't mean necessarily cheating. I mean that if you're not clear on who you are, it's very common for people to try to fake something else. So say that I'm the nervous type. I'm a nervous Nora. And I say to myself, oh no, no. I'm not a nervous type because I don't like the way that sounds. It sounds needy. So I might pretend to be an ultra independent person because I don't want to show my hand. I don't want to show my cards. I don't want to ask for too much. This is where blindsides happen in relationships more than you think. I see it all the time. Because how long do you think you can keep that up? Okay, I've got the facade then that I'm independent, I'm cool, I don't need anything. So maybe I can keep that up for 3 months, maybe 8 months max. Then I'm going to hit a stress point, the hot water, the tea, and now my true needs are going to come out. But now you've already been accustomed to me being this low needs kind of person. Now I'm crying. You don't care for me. You don't love me. You don't see me. You don't get me. So haven't I blindsided somebody? So all of that to say, let's end, as I want to do in all my videos now, with a little bit of a relationship RX. The RX is take my quiz. I'm going to put the link here. It's going to take you like 2 minutes to do. Secondarily, if you do have a partner, I have a partner quiz for you as well. And what's really important in the instructions is it doesn't matter, your partner doesn't have to take the quiz. You don't need confirmation from them. It's what you think and how you feel and how you perceive your partner to be. You answer the questions that way. But it will be very important information because then we have to talk about what to do about it. So please take the quiz. If you're compelled, write down. Just let me know if it summarized you accurately. You don't have to make that public, but just let us know. Now, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. You'll see me again every Sunday. But thank you so much for your time.